But really what it boils down to is having a culture of getting stuff done, right? One of the things that you told me before we hopped on air that I thought was super interesting, you're kind of a nomad, right? So you're in Las Vegas, you're going to LA, and you kind of travel around, and you're a, correct me if I'm wrong, a minimalist. You don't have a lot of stuff with you. How did that end up happening?
I was living in Tucson, Arizona, which is where I went to college, and I had graduated, and I owned the house that I lived in, and I was bored. After graduation, right, there's this time period where people are just slowly moving out over like a year, and after a year I'm like, okay, do I want to be somewhere where everything I care about is leaving the city actively every month, or do I want to go somewhere and like find a new adventure and a new way to live? So I was trying to figure out where to go, and I was talking to one of my old high school friends on the phone, and she told me like, hey, you've always talked about traveling a lot, like now's the time to do that. You don't have a place where you want to go. So I said screw it, and I called a guy I know who was looking for a room, and I said, hey, do you want to rent the room that I was living in my house? He's like, yeah, but I need to move in tomorrow. I said, okay, we can do that. So I just packed up everything I had, put it in my car, sold everything else, and then just drove to Austin, Texas. And I never signed a lease again. So
you went from like
that's how it happened.
Austin to Las Vegas to LA, and you just kind of bounce around. So how do you do that and manage your team? Like what are some things that you've had to learn to be able to manage a team of 13 and always be on the go and not have like an office set up, so to speak?
I've never known anything else. It's kind of the whole way I've done things. Not having ever managed people in a physical location, I guess my comparison set's 0. But I would think that the reason it works is because the way of looking over someone's shoulder and managing them, like telling them what to do, when to do it, like who wants to be managed like that? So I've just tried to create a company that I would want to work in, and I try to be someone I would want to work for. And are people working full 8-hour days when they work for me remotely? I don't know. I hope so. I hope that people use the trust that I give them well. But honestly, it's of secondary importance to me. We structure things so that if everybody knows what they need to get done that week. And on Friday, we end every week by looking at our board, and we say like, okay, did everyone get done what they said they needed to get done? And if the answer is no, what's interesting is it doesn't just fall on that person. The whole team works together, and we don't really work late, but like if we needed to, everyone would work together to get it to that point. So people are they're not going to be throwing their team under the bus like that and forcing everybody to work harder at the end of the day on Friday. And we just don't have that problem.
And I think this is really the future of managing teams. Cause I've managed 20 people in office. We have over 100 people now that we're managing at our agency, and we're 100% remote right now. So there's definitely pros and cons to both, but really what it boils down to is having a culture of getting stuff done, right? Like I want to complete things. I want to do and excellence, right? You want it done properly. And really what you hit there is it's more about being part of the team and not letting your team down than letting my boss down or the client down. That's the real thing about being able to get things done. And there's been some interesting studies on this. There was several companies that do unlimited PTO, right? And we've thought about, we do a 980 schedule. So every other Friday, everybody gets off. So twice a month, at least you get a 3-day weekend. But you have to get all your work done, right? In the amount of time, and it's the same amount of work, just you get more days off. And we're thinking about moving to unlimited PTO, but one of the things that I've looked at is actually people take less PTO off when paid time off when they have unlimited PTO, and the reason for that is the managers and the team members still have to get all their work done. And so what ends up happening is people feel guilty and they don't want to take the time off. And so and not because of the company. It has nothing to do with the company or the boss. It has everything to do with their manager that they're close with and the team that they're close with, that if I leave, if you and I work together, Max, and I'm like, hey, I'm leaving for 2 weeks, and then I come back and then I'm like, I'm leaving for 2 weeks again, right? And I'm not going to be around, that you have to do all that work. Like the work still has to get done. And so what ends up happening is people actually take less time off which is, I've been hesitant. That's one of the reasons I'm hesitant about doing it, because I actually want our team to take the time off and get refreshed and those kind of things. And so we've been kind of working through that. And it sounds like that's the kind of the atmosphere, the culture that you've built, is you're basing success off of the amount of work you can get done, not so much did you show up and punch in a card. Is that right?
You're exactly right. And that's a problem that we have. Like, it has its pros and cons, like you said. It's like one of my designers was telling me, we were shifting our schedule around, and she was like, Max, something interesting is that I feel super guilty when I take time off. Like, what can we do about that? And I don't know what the answer to that question is, because like my answer is like, don't feel guilty. Like, I don't want you to feel that way. The team is happy to cover for you, just like you'd be happy to cover for them. Like, we want you to do that. But what you pointed out to, my answer is bad in response to the question that she gave. Like, there needs to be a systematic answer to that question. I think your mandatory or your every other Friday off system, it controls for that a little bit, which is nice.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, we've thought about also doing like just moving to 410s, right? Just eliminating Fridays altogether and just being like, we still have the same workload. You just get 3-day weekends all the time, which 3-day weekends are awesome, right? Like, everybody loves a 3-day weekend, and it's very refreshing, right? So that's one look of it. The other thing that I think too, to that person's question, is it's more systems, right? And I don't like to complicate things, but if you want to take time off, it's all about planning, right? So it's like, if 6 months in advance you have a wedding coming up that you have to go to across the country and you're going to be gone for 10 days, it's really easy to plan around that, right? Like, even with 16 people, or if you have 13 people, you could totally plan around that, right? Like, it's like, okay, well, let's shrink these deadlines, and the client's expecting it here, but you need to finish it here. And then there's going to be edits, so you need to get that done a week earlier, and you can really do it. It's all about planning. And I think that being able to plan around things, that's awesome. And then the other thing is, it's just creating, I had this today. I had one of our managers who got COVID, and she's really sick, and they reached out, or one of her team members reached out and said, hey, if there's anything I can do to help her, let me know. I'm saying the same thing. I'm like, same to me. I've already reached out to her. I'm trying to cover for her. And so it's really just about communication, like, and being really honest of like, hey, I'm not going to be around for this, or hey, I'm sick, or hey, my kid was up all last night. And we've tried really hard to create an atmosphere like that.